Today we've got a special edition of Final Expense Trainer as my good friend Matt Mungia interviewed me last week, and I happened to share some of the stuff that I normally wouldn't share with the public. So in this interview that you're going to see, you're going to hear me go over like a lot of key information on the system that all the top producers are using and like how we close 15 plus sales each week. I share tips and information on how many leads I was working back when I was writing three to over 400,000 of annualized premium each year, the kind of leads that we work and where to get them, how I specifically target the exact people that are easier to sell to, and how to effectively work in the Florida market, and a lot more. So please, before we get started, give the video a thumbs up, and if for some reason you haven't subscribed, do that now. We're putting out new content pretty much every single week. And check this out. If you'd like a copy of the free New Agent Starter Kit, just shoot me an email at doug@ufesonline.com. So with all that being said, let's go ahead and roll the interview.
I did want to introduce our new speaker. Again, remember I talked about how sometimes in this business, it's that one meeting, that one catalyst that takes your game to the next level. Now, you don't think it's going to, you don't know it's going to, but when you get there and things happen, then sometimes magic happens. And that's kind of how what Doug is for me. So Doug is going to be our guest speaker today. For those that have been living under a rock for a long time and never heard of Doug Massi, Doug was at the Florida meeting. He is in the lives in Florida, been in the business a long time. For sure, if there was a Final Expense Hall of Fame, for sure he's the first pick candidate to jump in that Hall of Fame. The guy's a legend. I don't know how many YouTube subscribers he has these days, probably a 1.3 million or something like that. But, I learned a lot from this guy. So remember, sometimes these meetings, sometimes it's a call, sometimes it's a Zoom that sparks that one thing, again, that catapults your career to a whole nother level. So for me, and for those that hadn't heard the story or wasn't in Florida when I said it, Doug Massi. Doug, you're on camera. If you just wave, buddy, so they know who I'm talking about. There he is. We had a friendly, fun competition. This was years ago. I don't know, Doug. We're going to start dating ourselves, but it was probably 6-7 years ago. And we decided that I think we had, Doug, a bunch of direct mail leads that somebody didn't buy. And so we were doing at the time somebody a favor, a friend of ours at the time, a favor. And we divvied up all those leads amongst ourselves, and we each got a certain amount of leads, and we each put our systems at that time to the test. And so we each got a certain amount of leads, and we put our systems to the test. So I did my system at that time. I was doing 2 hours between appointments, and I was setting my own appointments, I believe, at that time. And Doug had his system, and he got his leads, and he did his system, and then another guy did his system, and we all flew into I think it was Jackson, Mississippi, is where our leads were, and so we all got our licenses in Mississippi just for this deal. Got our hotel rooms. We're all set to compete, have a friendly competition, and put our systems against each other's. Well, when it was all said and done, after 2 days of competition, I think one guy never left his hotel room, so we smashed him pretty good. And then so it was really between me and Doug, and I think I did like 3,400 the first day. I nipped Doug the first day. The second day he nipped me. He did like 4,000, and I did like 36, 37. When it was all smoke cleared, Doug beat me by a couple $100. But what I learned on that fun thing was my system was not on par. It wasn't set up to hit bigger numbers like Doug was hitting at that time. At that time, I think, to my knowledge, Doug was the one hitting 400,000, a couple years in a row at that point in final expense coverage. And I realized that I needed to make some adjustments to my game. As good as I thought I was, I could still get better. There was room for improvement. I didn't know it all, and my systems weren't the most efficient they could be. And so that's when a lot of things clicked, and I came back and I realized, number one, I need more leads. Number two, I don't need as much time in between appointments. That's wasted time. I need to be more efficient with my time. And those were two of the biggest things. And then I got my wife to set my appointments. There was a lot of changes I made. And so lots of things then catapulted me to the next year to where I hit over 500,000 with a well-oiled machine at that point. And I would have never done that had I not gone to that meeting, right? Had I not gone to that friendly competition. And that's why I say these meetings are so important, guys, because you never know what you're going to learn and who you're going to learn from and who you're going to click with and learn from. So anyway, all that being said, Doug, I thank you for being on this call. I want to ask you a bunch of questions. And guys, this is an open forum. So, I don't want to be the one asking all the questions as possible. Ask as many questions as you have to Doug as well. But let's start off with some of the basic, more boring stuff, as I like to say, Doug, that everybody still needs to know, right? Just like when you're building a foundation in final expense Medicare, it doesn't matter. You got to get the foundation first. Yeah, that's the boring part, but you need it in order to build and get fancy with things. So why don't you introduce everybody, how long you've been in the business, what brought you into the business, what'd you do before the business? Let's start there and go from there.
Hey, and thanks for inviting me, Matt. And everybody, welcome to the call. Hopefully you'll all get something out of this today. Every time I listen to a call and I watch a Zoom call, I try to grab something. There's got to be something that I can take from it. So hopefully I'll be able to do something like that with you guys. I've got licensed, had to be around 2007, 2008, did some mortgage protection, that didn't last long. I was pretty good at it, and then eventually the leads kind of dried up and I wasn't interested in working with one of these MLMs. I actually tried one of them. They said, don't worry, Doug, we can get you plenty of leads. 3 months later, I had over 200 leads that were like 2-3 years old. So they couldn't do none of their promises. And of course they didn't want to release me. So I became their hostage. But eventually that's kind of how it stirred me to final expense. And really, that was around 2012, excuse me. And can everybody hear me okay? I should have asked you that earlier. Sound quality is decent. Okay. So 2013 is when, probably about, I would say beginning of summer is when I committed, is when I was like, okay, it's time for me to go all in on this. And that was really when I really started. Maybe I should say, I started about the beginning of 2013, but I didn't commit. There was no weekly leads. I was still, trying to figure things out. And I just didn't have I wasn't putting in the hard work at that point either.
So we have similar backgrounds. I too came from the mortgage protection, I think. And the reason is probably similar. The leads weren't as plentiful, and and at that time, you had to travel a lot to go, to get more leads. You were traveling a lot, and you're working weekends because mortgage protection, those clients are typically working. So you had to put in the weekends, and my daughter was just being, she was young at that time. So there was a lot of reasons why I transitioned over to final expense, and it looks like we made the right decision in that realm. So
yep.
Now tell me a few things here, Doug. Let's just start off with the basics, like I talk about. When you were in your prime, going at it, 100 miles an hour, tell me a little bit about what worked for you. What kind of leads were you working? How many hours were you putting in? What days were you working? I know you had a unique schedule. So tell us a little bit about those basic things.
Well, let me just say this. So when I started, that 2013, by the time when I finally said, okay, this is what I'm going to do. We're going to do this every single week. At that point, it was just going from doing mail drops to getting on the fixed cost leads that we have, because that really wasn't available to me then. Until I basically, some of you guys may know the story. I found our main lead vendor, went to a bunch of insurance companies and said, hey, I got this killer company, but they've got these fixed cost direct mail final expense leads, but they won't talk to me because I'm just an agent. They want to talk to someone who can put down like a $30,000 deposit. And so company after company, none of them would do anything. And that's how this kind of started working for me. That's when I met Brad and brought him this. And that's when I got on the fixed cost leads. So of course, the reason I did was because I was paying top dollar for leads. I'm doing mail drops. You never know what you're going to get. And I knew if I could have a set price on a lead, have a certain amount of leads every week, that I'd be fine. And, like most people, I think I started right around with between my wife and me with maybe 20, 30. I was calling myself, setting appointments myself after doing it for about 4 or 5 months. In the very beginning, I will say this, the one thing I did right was, I think I had at one point, one of the companies that I was working under, one of the managers said I should just door knock. So that was probably the best advice that I had gotten when I first started. And that's what I did. I door knocked the leads. My wife was doing it also. So between the two of us, we were out our first few months really door knocking around that time. So that by the time, I don't know, maybe the end of the summer, I finally said, you know what? We're figuring out what's going on. We're able to make the presentation. We've got the work ethic. We're working. Why don't I just try and make some calls? What do I got to lose? And so, of course, at that point I did. And, here's the funny thing. When you're back doing mortgage protection, setting appointments wasn't hard for me. So I knew it shouldn't be that hard, and it wasn't. And so that's what I started doing. So I went from the door knocking to the calling to set appointments. And at that point, I realized, wait a minute, we can handle more. We were still door knocking in between. And, when I say door knocking in between, if the client told me to blank off and they weren't interested, well, I know people are different on the phone than they are in person. So, that was one thing. Another thing I did right. I 2 weeks later, I'm knocking on their door. And of course, half the time they're nice and they're completely different than they were on the phone. So as time went on that year, we were upping the leads, upping and upping. Meanwhile, I'm trying to find someone to set appointments for my wife and myself, because at that point, Mariana, she did start setting appointments after I realized it wasn't so hard. And it got to the point to where I would say it had to be around December of 2013. We had someone good. I went through a few people, had someone good. She was willing to work. That's the hardest part in finding an appointment setter. She was willing to work. We paid her whatever she wanted. And at that point, I think between my wife and I, we were at had to be 50, 60 leads some weeks, over 80 leads, maybe other weeks. And so we were putting the pedal to the metal. And meanwhile, I'm doing this. And so what I'm realizing is, as you get better, and this is something you guys anybody who's new at this, you're going to realize this. As you're getting better, you realize, hey, I don't need 45 minutes to an hour to do the presentation. What we started doing is streamlining, getting you the same effect, less and less time. So it got to the point to where 2014, the year that first year I broke 400,000 in premium, I was doing, and this may sound kind of crazy, my target was 12 appointments in a day, 2 to 3 days a week. And basically, I'm scheduling appointments at every half hour. There'd be a little break here and there. And that worked, that made up for, the people that no-showed us, for the people that when you go in and you're speaking with them and they're just fighting you over and over and over and excuse after excuse. And, it's going to be really hard to sell those. There's a time when we kind of have to figure out we have to move on. And so kind of got better at doing that. And it worked. It worked. There were days when I would say my appointment setter's calling to set appointments. She gets the 12, and then someone else calls back, and then she sets a 13th and a 14th. So there were some of those days. And believe this or not, I think I was telling Ruben about this. We were talking last week, and I told him, hey man, you think that's good. Imagine having 12 appointments, and this happens to everybody. So those of you who are new and struggling, trying to find your way, there were days when I would have 12 appointments and I would come back with 0 sales. It happens. Trust me.
Now, for those that didn't hear that, Doug, you said 12 appointments in a day, right?
Correct.
In a day. And guys, that was the big eye opener for me when I remember calling Doug. I think I was at the airport already leaving to Jackson where we're meeting. And I said, Doug, I hope you're ready, buddy, because and I already have my 2 days pretty much booked and fully scheduled. I'm locked and loaded, and I hope you're ready for this. And it was, well, how many appointments do you have? Like I said on this day, I think it was like a Friday. Well, I think we did a Friday and a Saturday or a Thursday or a Friday, whatever it was, doesn't matter. I said on the first day, I have 5 appointments. Now you got to remember, I was at that point before I met Doug, I was lazy, doing 3 appointments a day, and I thought I was full-time working hard. I said, man, I got 5 appointments. I said, so you better come with the Thunder Buddy. He's like, you're kidding, right? I said, well, what do you mean you're kidding? He's like, I got 12 or 13 or whatever he says, some crazy number. And I'm thinking, I'm starting doing the math in my mind. I'm like, there's not even enough hours in the day. What do you mean you have 12? It's impossible, because I was doing 2 hours between each appointment. Doug, you were doing 30 minutes between appointments. So I'm like, how does that even work? So why don't you explain how and why you're able to do that and set 12 in a day, just all back to back within 30 minutes of each other?
Well, and look, again, it comes down to, keep in mind, you guys know our market. We get stood up. You get with people that, that'll pull out multiple policies, and of course, you're like, great, let's see how old they are and see if we've got a potential, replacement scenario, see if I can do something better for the client. So we do get those, but it just seemed to work because, so let me just add something to this. I had been, and you kind of asked me to address this. I had been in sales for, the previous shoot. So I'm in my 50s now. I got into sales in my late 20s and selling home improvements. So I had, by the time I made my first final expense presentation, this is something I thought about this weekend, I had already made thousands of face-to-face appointments. So one of the things that I was pretty good early on at, and I got to say, I say early on, by the time I was doing all those appointments, was knowing when to move on. And so there would be times when, 8-10 minutes into the presentation, 12 minutes into 15 minutes into it, I would kind of be like, all right, it's time to give up on this. And to this day, thankfully, I've got that spidey sense. Look, if you're new, and you haven't made thousands of sales presentations, in-home presentations, that's what I did when I sold home improvement stuff. You may not have this. This was that thing that I had. But also, I'll also say, if you're new, no matter what, go through with your presentation. Don't give up. Yeah. Don't take no for an answer. Look, the hard work is going to beat the talent until the talent kicks in. So that was one thing. And that was, to me, probably the biggest thing. And to this day, I still have this. Now, it's funny. I had a guy, I don't have to do the sacrifice that I did back then. So I don't. And things have changed a lot for us. So I was with an appointment with a guy just the other day, and I sat. So we sit near a gigantic lake, And I'm like, you ever get alligators come up here? He's like, yeah, we just killed a 12-footer the other day. I'm like, oh, great. And we're sitting, outside. He didn't invite me in the trailer. We're sitting outside. I'm like, do you see water moccasins? Yeah, we see water moccasins. Don't worry, we're okay. I'm like, oh, great. Okay, so, this is the normal thing in some of the rural areas we work at. But I sat with him, and of course this guy, right off the bat, as I'm making the presentation, he goes, just give me the numbers, man. Just shoot straight for the numbers. And so meanwhile, either right before that or right after that, he's like, well, I've already got 2 policies. So I'm like, okay. The one thing that I will say I did right, and this is what I recommend, when people start doing that, say, no problem, I'm getting right to that. I move on with my presentation. I don't change. I'm not changing anything. And it's funny because as soon as I did, he was like, and I start getting into the difference between whole life and term life. As soon as I did, he's like, now what's the difference? So now he started, asking questions. And when it came down to it, one of his policies was a term life policy that he had recently gotten, and it wasn't a great company, and it wasn't, it was like the easy replacement scenario. So when I was new, all that stuff would have turned me off. It probably would have scared me right away. I'd be like, oh, this guy's fighting me right from the start. However, in another sense, it may not have, because of where I was at when we got into final expense. So part of my story, I'm kind of breaking, because I just kind of something that I think is important. When we got into final expense, we were ready, because we were backed into a corner. We were so desperate. I lived in a little 1,200 square foot house that was mortgaged to the hilt. The money was running out. We were doing mail drops in different areas, trying different areas to figure out what areas of Florida were going to be better to sell in, and we were going through the learning curve. I was living by Miami, probably the hardest place in the country to sell final expense in. So that's why we weren't afraid to travel. And that desperation, because we were so desperate, I think that's why at that point I didn't give up. Like when someone was chasing me away, I would deal with objection over objection. I would just, they could give me a few objections. We just didn't give up. And we were also not afraid to drive. So one of the things I realized, here we are living in the city, common sense would dictate, and it didn't right away, that maybe people were a little nicer in the country and maybe the smaller towns. So, we were so desperate and willing that we were okay with driving 2 to 3 hours away. And that's kind of how our system got based, because once we found these hot spots, and we, again, we spent money to figure it out. Nothing came easy. Nobody was training us how to do it. No one was saying, hey, Doug, let me give you some tips about who to target. All the stuff that we talk about, that you're teaching, that we do here, that wasn't there. So I had to figure all that crap out for myself. And it wasn't easy. But again, we were so desperate. I mean, we were selling stuff. I sold my gun collection. There was this one area I really wanted to try, and I knew it was going to be decent. We actually live there now. And so I was like, man, I really want to do a big drop there. And I think maybe we had done a small drop there, or I tried some telemarketed leads there. I think I touched on a little bit, but I was like, I just didn't have the cash flow. And I just remember calling my buddy up, who's a gun collector, and I'm saying, man, I got the AR-15, I got the Desert Eagle. Man, any interest in those? And he's like, let me come over. He's like, you still got the Glocks? I'm like, yeah. So, he helped, thankfully. Thank God, my old buddy Martin, who's a guy I did commercial fishing with in my early 20s, taught me how to fish. And thankfully, he did that. We did the mail drop. And at that point on, I just remember that was kind of like when things started getting easier. That was when that desperation road, it led to the hard work. And by that time, the talent was kicking in. And so that was like, boom, it pushed us right into 2014. was the big aha moments, really.
Yeah, I think we all, well, I shouldn't say we all, I think anybody who's in your position, goes through struggles. I'm looking at Ruben. He has his own struggle stories. You have your own struggle stories. I have my own struggle stories where you're pawning things off. You're pawning your gun collection just so you can make some lead drops and try to survive another week or two. Ruben, same thing. He's calling his wife for bread and cheese at the store. They can afford it. Yeah, I have my own stories where our air conditioner broke down in July or August, and we couldn't afford to fix an air. Are you kidding me? So you go get a wall unit from Walmart, $80, and that was stretching it. And turned that sucker on in one room, and I stayed in one room, and I put a towel underneath the thing so the door wouldn't go out of that master bedroom. So when somebody starts feeling sorry for themselves, I say, hey, it's part of the game, but you find a way to grind it out and scratch it out. If you're a survivor and if you can get through this, then everything else will be so much easier, but anybody can quit. It doesn't take a hero to quit. We all have tough times, and most people quit. So it's nice to see that, and hopefully if there's somebody on here that's struggling at the moment, they're listening to your story. I mean, we've all had them, Gatlin, I see him on, same thing. I mean, he has his own stories. So
and let me just say, at that point, right around that 2014, I wasn't thinking, wow, I want to be a top producer. I was thinking, let's just make a living.
Right.
I didn't realize that by putting in that extra work, by kind of digging deep and pulling that part of me that I didn't even realize that I had. I didn't realize that things would end up being the way they are. And that's the one thing I think for everybody on this call, with what we're doing, with the platform, with the products, the carriers, the trainings, the leads, we're all in the position to make a good living. But for some of us who are willing to sacrifice, and I'm going to use that word, sacrifice, because that's what Mariana, my wife, and I, that's what we did our first few years in the business. We sacrificed. Once we had the system where we were going from 6 appointments, 8 appointments, or I should say I was at that point, 10 appointments, 12 appointments in a day. We were upping it because I was like, well, it's just going to make it that much better. We're just going to get there. We're going to get to where we need to be and be more comfortable sooner. And I think that a lot of the people on this call have that and may not, like I didn't, may not even realize that you have it. But let me just say this. That's why the one thing I'm like, a lot of times I kind of feel like I'm like a meme on LinkedIn. I'm a living meme. If you are willing, with what we do, what we have, if you're willing to sacrifice a few short years of that long life that we have, that long life, then at some point you never have to sacrifice anything ever again. And I'm proud to say, let me just say, we were, at that point. So by the time the end of 2014, after we did all that production, not only did I pay off our debt, but we actually paid off our mortgage. So that house, we went our next move when we first started, when we were selling stuff, was thinking, well, maybe we can get a second mortgage. I found out later there wasn't enough equity, but we ended up paying the thing off at the end of 2014. And now, let's see, I think it was like 2017, 2018, we started building a house. We found one of the areas we like to work in. We found a company that helps you design and build homes. We did all of that. And we moved in, it'll be 2 years in July. So we went from being in that little bitty 1,200 square foot house, and we don't have kids. It's just Mariana and myself, to being in really our dream house, with all the, it's a 2,600 square foot house. It has everything. I laugh because, here I am, I'm in my 50s and I can control everything in this house from the smartphone. It's got so much cool stuff. And let me just say this. So here's the kicker. So, if you know how to research and find, as you can probably find, is the house we live in now, it does not have a mortgage.
That's amazing. And how long did it take you to do all that, Doug, that you just talked about, to accomplish all those things?
Oh, okay. So we're talking like a 5-year period, really?
5-year period to get from literally dead broke, selling guns just to get some leads, to mortgage free and living a good life in 5 years. And that's what I tell everybody, the same thing. So, I mean, I'm just glad they get to hear from somebody else now, is like, because I feel like I say the same things over and over and over, but because it's the truth. I always say, if you just dedicate yourself 3 to 5 years, and now that we're adding Medicare to the arsenal, again, 3 to 5 years, and you can do exactly what me and Doug and some of the others have put ourselves and our families in a good situation, but you have to dedicate yourself. You have to learn your craft and be really good at it, or else it'll take you a lot longer.
I mean, we were failing, at this, it seemed like every step there's always something. So we failed over and over. That's how anybody who has success gets there. They don't give up. And I get it. Look, I get it. Sometimes it's hard, and you're like, we all come to a point to where, and we came to this a few times where we were like, well, do we try to do something else, or do we keep going? That didn't happen once. That happened several times, and thankfully we kept going on. And now the one thing I will say I love about, you brought up the Medicare, of course, I think everybody who's doing it, I keep hearing guys over and over saying, God, I wish I was doing this years ago, 5 years ago, 8, whenever. That's something exciting, because now, here, Marianne and I, we're getting into the Medicare. Our intention is we're doing this because we've got thousands of clients on the books. So, now we're going to be able to keep growing, and maybe not have to be at neutral the way things are now, which it's a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling to not have the pressure, to not worry about losing anything, to not have to sacrifice. So now it's like all under our terms. And so that's the other thing I got to say, and that's why I started doing it. And I'm like, once, Matt and I started having a few conversations about this, and I realized, this is the Medicare thing. I need to do it. I need to be part of this. It's just, I'm curious as to what we're going to be able to do. I mean, I have an idea, but I just picture 10 years from now, things are just going to be that much better because of Medicare.
Yeah. I mean, there's no doubt. I mean, Doug, it's funny because if somebody told us, when we first did that thing back in Mississippi 6 years ago, or 7 years ago, whenever it was, that we'd be jumping in the Medicare game now, we would have laughed at each other and told us, you would have told me I'm crazy. I would have told you you're crazy. That was our heyday for many years. Final expense. But yeah, that Medicare is a real blessing.
And I look back at that time, like you said, it was an aha moment. When I look back at it now, I realize that, well, we are where we're at now because we were willing to do stuff like that. We were willing to travel to a different state, to hang out with other final expense agents, and cross, work together to figure out how we can build our future. We were willing to do that. Most people just aren't. They're willing to do the Zoom call. They're willing to come and do a ride along. It's funny. I've gotten a couple of my agents on the call. Don't be offended, guys, but I speak with agents that are out of state, and I'm like, hey, we're ready to pull the trigger. You're pulling the trigger on leads. If you want, you can come ride with me. And it's funny. I think it's funny how some agents won't do that. I'm like, oh my God, I would have killed I did 2 ride-alongs with different people when I got into final expense. And the first ride along I did, check this out. So this is crazy. This guy's system, it was a 3-call close. He would go to the client's house 3 times. On the 3rd time is when he would do the close. So the first was the door knock. He'd stick the lead in the door, you know how we do the door knock lead, but instead of pushing his way in, he would be like, no, I don't have time. He tried to do a takeaway and he would set an appointment. Okay. And then he'd come back for the second appointment. He'd get the information, make a partial presentation, set another appointment, finish the presentation. And by that time, and I get what he was doing because he's building this rapport and he just, but the thing is, I learned not to do that there's definitely a better way. That was like my first ride along, what I learned. In my second ride along, okay, so this is interesting.
Yeah, I was going to say, that guy cannot possibly be in the business any longer.
He's not.
If he maintained that business, he's done.
He's not. I stayed in contact with him on LinkedIn. Man, he's changed business. I don't even know what he does nowadays. But then second ride along with the different guy was very interesting, because what I learned from him was that, one, where I was trying to sell at that point, we were still in Miami. We were trying to sell in Dade County and Broward County, and just kind of trying to figure out the market. We didn't start traveling. That was probably my aha moment, because when I went to travel up towards Central Florida and ride with him, I'm like, I realized right off the bat, wow, these people are nice. They're compared to what I'm dealing with. People threaten to shoot me and stuff in Miami, and the gates around the house with the dogs. People open the door to let the dogs out. I mean, that's the Dade County stuff. And that's what I realized, like, oh my God, this guy's working. And I realized this guy taught me that we were trying to sell was really hard. So I needed to change that. And the second thing he taught me was that I knew I was going to be good at it, because he just wasn't trying really hard. Now I realized later, to give the guy I'm not to say back, because he was a manager at the time. So he had already reached the point where he had sold years before that and really wasn't selling, and was doing a ride along with me to try to help me. So, but at that point, what I realized was he wasn't trying real hard. He gave up immediately. He wasn't pushing. I remember sitting there with this one of these clients that he door knocked, and we went in. And I just remember thinking when we left, going, oh my God, I was closing her. There's no way I wouldn't have closed her. So that was like the type of things that, to me, it's funny. And that's the type of thing that somebody might learn from me, that they might realize, wow, hey, shoot, I can do, I see what he did. Now let me take myself and put myself in that position. Now I can do it better.
Yeah, those ride-alongs are just invaluable. And, that's sometimes a big red flag when somebody's not willing to come ride along with somebody of your caliber. To me, there's a price to pay in this business, and that's one of the prices. You might have to fly somewhere to go get this extra training that you need from a top guy. I mean, I see all those awards behind you. So for those that jumped on the call late, and after I introduced Doug, Doug was the #1 agent in the country many years in a row for Security National. We've been on many trips together, Doug. I think you've won that October award, the Founders Award.
Yeah, I know you've won it. I've won it before. Yeah.
And we've traveled. We were in Thailand together on the Security National trip. Thailand was amazing. We were on this Alaskan cruise one year. That was amazing. So, I mean, Doug is a guy that wrote 400,000 several years in a row. SNL's #1 agent many years in a row. And, so for those just jumping in, so a couple of the things you hit on, I want to just reiterate, because I know you skimmed over them, but especially new agents need to know. You mentioned, Doug, if you're new, use those bad clients to practice your rebuttals. It's funny because I remember one time there was an agent from Houston came to ride with me. And so she had already ridden with me 2 or 3 presentations. She had listened to me. And then the 4th guy we went in was a non-buyer. I mean, he was negative about everything. So I knew that right away, just like Doug has his spidey sense, right? I knew right away, just from the years of doing it, this guy's, we're going nowhere with it. But I said, I'm going to use this as a coaching and a learning moment for the new agent. So I said, so what do you think? Nikki, what's her name? So she jumped in, and I let her take over because I wanted her to start practicing the objections and rebuttals and things like that. And so like what you said is super important. If you know somebody's not a buyer, it's okay. Use that as practice and try to have a rebuttal for every objection they give you. Use that as practice. Think of that as if you're a baseball player, that's your batting cage. Use that person as your batting cage. You're there for practice so that your next one, when it matters, it can actually get through that objection that they have. Also, if they ask for prices, you mentioned, you acknowledge their position. You're right, because if somebody says, well, can you just give me the prices? I've had that plenty of times. We've all had that if you've been in the business. Can we just get to the prices? No problem, Mr. Jones. I'll get you the prices. Let me just ask you a few more things, right? If you say a few more things, you're buying time. And then you still got to do your presentation. I don't know about yours, Doug. It's probably pretty short. My actual in-home presentation, if nobody interrupts me, it's 8 or 9 minutes long. So it doesn't take long. So I continue on with it, right? Because I have to build that value first. And my value, my main meat of the presentation where I think that they're like, okay, if I'm going to get it, it's when I show them that Americo brochure where it gives them all the benefits that they're going to get. So you got to continue on with the presentation. Never just give them quotes. You're never going to make a sell. I mean, maybe 1 in 100 you will, but I don't like those chances. And then you're willing to travel, right? You were traveling to find hot spots. You were, and then when you realized Miami wasn't the spot, okay, let's go here. Let's try there. Let's drop here. Let's drop there. Same way for me in Chicago. I realized Chicago's I thought it was going to be a great market. It was horrendous. It beat me up and spit me out. But guess what I did? I didn't quit. I went to Milwaukee. I would drive the Beltway all the way into Indiana. I made it happen. I traveled. I did whatever was needed in order to thrive and survive, if you will. So got to be willing to travel, go do ride-alongs.
And let me just add to that, we've got Facebook leads. You can do your own little mail drop. There's companies we can recommend. You can drop 1,000 pieces here, drop 1,000 pieces there, or just get the darn Facebook leads in those areas. And do it. I figured out my limit. So it's funny because doing those 12 appointment days back when we were doing it, my limit, I tried to not go past right around 3-hour drive was what I could do in a day. So, picture two to three, it was, and a lot of times at one point I was rotating 2 days, 1 week, 3 days, the next in the field. Driving 2 to 3 hours to the area, working it, and then coming home that same day, 2 to 3 hours. And then, of course, maybe that first year, there were a lot of days when I would stay the night and run a bunch of appointments, maybe on the way back, or do a half day. I would do that. But, if you can imagine, if you do, you make 12 appointments, 14, up to 14 appointments, it takes a lot out of you. So by the time we would do that, and Marianne and I would both do the driving, she would take a little more time. She wouldn't do as many appointments, but by the time we'd get home from that 12 to 15 hour day, you're kind of a mess the next day. That was what the stuff we were doing those first couple of years.
Yeah, I think you were running. So you're doing direct mail. You were calling set appointments. I wrote all this down. 50 to 80 leads a week, 12 appointments a day, working 2 to 3 days. So you would go, if I remember correctly, you'd work a power of Tuesday, all day Tuesday. And then on Wednesday, I think that's when you would fax in or clean up your applications and send in your applications. That was kind of like your rest day, but you were still putting in the applications. Then you would maybe call on Wednesday for Thursday. you know, am I right kind of on that?
You are. And so, I think it's important that I know a lot of agents are like, well, if you have family, that's different. We don't, it's my wife and me. So, but we make sure we have no problem. When we were our first year, we had no problem working Saturdays and Sundays. Even after we were really, after the success was there, we would still, one thing I will say, no matter what, you got to make sure you do a Saturday every few weeks, because, and to me, a Saturday, you're going to have our great days, a Saturday of calling. You can get a lot accomplished in a shorter amount of time, calling to set appointments on a Saturday. And then, because you're catching people at a different time than they would normally be during the week. And then it's the same with going out to selling. We're catching people that some, not a lot of them, but some of them do work, some of them do other things. And so you got to always add in that extra day, that different day. So that's why I say the schedule for me, I'd be out in the field Tuesday and Thursday some weeks, and then other weeks, Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, and then rotated. And it would also depend on how far. If we were doing the 3-hour drives, I didn't, that was just hard. You're driving 3 hours. It's hard to do that 3 days a week. So that would be a lot of the time when it was that distant area that we were working. It's just hard to do that. That's when I would do maybe the 2 days, and then maybe the 1.5 to 2 hour drive area. Then, okay, now it's easier for me to do 3 days a week.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. If anybody has any questions, come off mute. Feel free to ask away or ask in the chat room.
And let me answer.
Greg.
I know Greg asked about do we have 2 cars when we traveled? So yeah, we did. Marianne and I, we did have 2 cars, but we never did like the same in one day. Like if they couldn't take my appointment, or if something happened for some reason, like I'd pull up to a house or something and, do a door knock or what have you, and it couldn't see me, but I knew Mariana was going to be in the area tomorrow. Yeah, we would. So we would both do that. That was the thing about our system. When you've got 2 agents in the same house working as a team, and then you add in the appointment setter, it was that really was a big game changer for us.
Let me ask this, knowing what you know now about final expense, what are a couple of key things that you would advise new and experienced agents and things that you would advise them what to do and what not to do?
There's a lot.
As far as things,
as far as new agents are concerned, you learn from your failures. I don't only want to say mistakes. Keep pushing forward. Don't give up easily. We're going to have those failures in life. Don't be afraid once you're succeeding to one of the keys. And this is something that I tell our agents all the time, the agents that get in this thing where they're running 20 or 30 leads. Don't be afraid to bump it up. And when I say bump it up, if you're running 20 leads, 10 leads could make a big difference extra. So 30, but I'm going to push you to do 40, because then it's going to change everything for you. So don't be afraid to step up, don't be afraid to travel. Don't be afraid to get bed bugs. You won't. I never did. Sleeping in some of the hotels that you have to sleep in.
Doug,
that's all part of the learning curve.
Let me hit on something, because I get excited about this when we start talking about this. 100% right. And I didn't realize that because I didn't have a mentor to slap me around and tell me, listen, knucklehead, this is what you need to do to take your game to the next levels, right? So what you just said there is so powerful about the whole 10 leads. Don't be afraid to bump it up 10 leads. And why is that? Well, let me just tell you from my perspective. Think about it. Let's say your lead is $30, right? A $30 lead, and you bump it up 10. That's $300. Out of 10 leads, I promise you, even if you're bad, you're going to sell 1. So you're not going to lose money by bumping it up 10, right? Because you're going to make the average size sale $760, right? So you're going to double your money with 1 sale. So that's the way to think of it. And if you're cross-selling, of course, now you're in the home and you can possibly turn it into more sales. But my point is, the average person is going to sell 2 out of 10. So now they just made an extra $1,500. It cost them $300. So if somebody walks up to you on the street and offers you an extra $1,200 per week, are you going to say no? That's what this is, right? That's basically what this is, because if you're the average agent, you're going to sell 2 out of 10 direct mail leads, which means you put in an extra 760 times 2, so over $1,500. Let's just cut it down to $1,500 on average. It costs you $300 to make that 15. So you profited $1,200 by bumping your leads up by 10. And not only that, but Doug knows we're at all these conventions of winners at these trips around the world. And Doug, I don't know about you, but one of my favorite things to do at these dinners when we're all these top agents is ask them, what kind of leads are you working and how many? And almost always the number is 30 leads or more. Almost everyone there is 30 leads or more. In fact, we've only had one person that was on 20 leads or less that actually made a trip. He made it one time. It was an SNL trip. He was on 20 leads a week. Wow. But I mean, if you want to get into the serious numbers like Doug's talking about, it's 30 leads or more. I mean, what's your thoughts on that, Doug?
Yeah, to me, I mean, here's the thing. It's just, I think we're afraid to do the investment. So I get that. Go out, make a few sales, work some Facebook leads, and maybe cut through part of the learning curve. That's fine. But there comes a point. I mean, it's funny. I've got a couple of the older agents that have been with us for years that are, and I say older, that have been doing maybe in the business even longer. I've got one gentleman, he's been doing it longer than me. And to this day, he's at his comfort level. He works his 15 leads and goes out and makes his few sales every week. And I've been like, dude, even when I've had at one point I had another agent in his area, a new agent that wasn't doing so good. And I was like, hey man, listen, I got extra leads we can get you if you want, and you can use my appointment center, and he, no, I don't want to do that. We all get stuck in our ways. The trick is not to be afraid to take that next step. I mean, honestly, it's funny the way we did it. It just kind of came naturally. Perfect example, the appointment setter. The reason I wanted an appointment setter, probably almost shouldn't say this, but I'm just going to say it. It was to make things easier for us. That was the whole idea. But then once we had someone that could do it, and we already had the work ethic, we were already busting our butt. We were already, by the time that 2014 year had started, from when I was making my own calls, at that point I was writing 15,000 a month in annualized premium to maybe 20 around that time. So just doing it myself. So what we did was we used the appointment setter not to make things easier, but so that we could do more. So that instead of me spending more time, doing the office phone day, we would actually be able to be in the field more. And that's where, the 12 appointment stuff came. Cause I did the thing where, I was like, I gave her leads and said, here, give me 8 appointments if you can. That'll be a great day. And then the next thing she'd be like, well, I got 9, something happened. Somebody called back. I got 9. And then I'd be like, I can do 10. Let's try for 10. And the next thing we're doing that with 12. So it's just don't be afraid to push yourself a little bit. You'd be surprised. And it really comes down to that little bit of extra sacrifice too. Again, the whole sacrifice, that's, with our business, I like to use this term, something I heard a long time ago. Having an insurance license is like having a money printing machine. So the trick is you can turn it on. Now you can turn it on for a few hours. You can turn it on a little bit here and there, or you can just turn the switch on and keep it going. And that's kind of what we did. That's what we did. That's the sacrifice that anybody on this call, if you can do that, it changes everything. It makes this business short-term upfront, and then you'll get to enjoy the rewards quicker. And and the sacrifice
I
stuff.
think the
tends to go
problem
away.
sometimes lies, Doug, is where people don't understand that that's truly the truth. Like that really is the way it is. It is truly like printing money. Once you get good at this, it is like printing money. I'm going to exchange this week. I'm going to buy 50 leads for $1,500 and exchange. I'm going to make about 8 to 10,000. It is printing money when you get good at this. And people are like, well, I don't understand what you mean by that. What do you mean by that? I said, because when you get good at this, you get real efficient with your systems and your processes, and you start making a bunch of sales. And they don't understand that. And then so sometimes they'll say, well, what's your door knock script? And I'll press them on it. Okay, let's forget the door knock script. What's your in-home presentation? Let me hear it real quick. And it's just scattered, it's jumbled. So that's why you don't understand when we talk about printing money. When you get good at this, it's like printing money, but you have to be good at it. And you have all the presentations, you have all the door knock scripts, you have all the phone scripts that have produced a bunch of superstars, but you got to know that stuff. If you don't know the foundation, you'll never get to the point where you understand when we talk about it's like printing money. You'll never realize what we're talking about. It'll never hit you. But you mentioned a couple of things about sacrifice and working Saturdays and Sundays. You have to do that sometimes. If you think we're talking about you right now, then it's probably you that we're talking about, or you feel it and you know it deep down inside subconsciously that you should work Saturdays and Sundays. Sometimes you have to do that. You have to sacrifice a year or two of Saturdays and Sundays to get to where you want to be, whether that's on Medicare or final expense side. Sometimes you have to put in the sacrifice in order to get you where you want to be. Now, Doug, let me ask you, if you could go back and do it all over again, what would you do different?
Honestly, if we hadn't have done what we did, we wouldn't be where we're at today. We worked our way up there. Maybe not different, but maybe, I'll say what we did was right, was we didn't give up. Honestly, I mean, that truly is. Remember, things were different back then. We didn't have a program, a platform like what we have today. What everybody on this call can log in and do. That didn't exist. The companies that were doing similar stuff to that were doing, they were the MLM type of companies. I'm not going to get into that, but they promise you something that's maybe only a reality for very few, and then they put you in this position, maybe commission level wise or lead level wise, that makes it impossible to ever get to that point. So, that was the stuff that we had back then. And I had to figure out, we had to figure out how to do it on our own. So that was, maybe, and I did do, let me just say, I was with one of those MLMs when we first went, when I was a Hartford insurance agent. When we lost our lead program, I was basically a top producer selling mortgage protection. I wanted to keep doing mortgage protection. And that was when I went to one of those companies. And so, what the first thing I learned was that in our industry, people will say one thing and do another. And so nobody has to deal with that here. We all can make our own future. So as far as what I'm glad I was with the Alliance. I said it. Back then they were NAA, I think was
yeah.
Something, and so I'm glad I was with them for those few months, because I learned that that there's definitely a better way. There's definitely a better way. And at least none of you guys have to go through any of that nonsense.
Yeah. Well, I don't like to admit it either, but I also, again, I wouldn't change anything that I did. I think sometimes you have to kiss a lot of frogs, as they say, right? And I also had a little time there at the Alliance, but I wouldn't change it. I think we have somebody from the Dallas number has a question for you.
Yeah, man, that's me, man. It's
Chad. What's going on, Chad? Sorry, just has your phone number.
Hey, buddy, I wanted to chime in and just, throw in there with what you guys are saying. Doug, I'm in my 16th, 17th month from the beginning of the business. And when I started, the first month was knocking leads. My wife was making calls, not getting a lot of appointments. But, Matt can tell you, I didn't know anything about this industry. He let me know, hey, just go cross-sell MAPD and FE. And that first month, man, I was on fire. I knew I had to make sales. And the third month, my wife wasn't working any longer. She pulled out of the business. Matt could probably remember that because I put in a call and said, hey, she's going to quit the business. But I wanted to get off the ground as fast as I possibly could. And I worked every Saturday the first 6 months. And I wanted to tell everybody on the team, that was temporary. I didn't want to work every Saturday, for the rest of my career. The point was, if I had to knock, if I had to call, if I had to do whatever, if I needed tele-leads, Facebook leads, direct mail leads, it didn't matter. I just needed to be coachable, get as many leads as possible, work those Saturdays, and know that, hey, I can span out this career. I could get going quickly over, 4, 5, 6 months of working my butt off, or I can take 2, 3, 4 years or never get to a successful level without putting in a lot of energy in the very beginning. And I just wanted to, let you know that, because I know you don't know who I am, but I wanted to chime in. Thanks.
No, that's good stuff, Chad and Doug. That's Chad from Dallas. He's our Rookie of the Year, just won the award. The guy woke up. So again, like I always say, like what you said, what I say, people that have been there, done that say all the same thing. The crazy and good part about this business is if you can get it right, if you can get the business right, it doesn't take long to create some pretty nice income for yourself. I mean, for sure within 5 years, like you have everything paid off now within 5 years, from dead broke to everything paid off in 5 years. And you can do that in like Chad, for example. He woke up after 12 months, Doug, 12 months in the business. Remember, he was a gym rat. He was a personal trainer, knew nothing about insurance, came over to us, started learning to cross-sell Medicare from day one. So he was all final expense leads and then cross-selling Medicare. Woke up and in January had $50,000 in deposits when he woke up in month 13, and 50,000 and 49,000 in February. So he made $100,000 in month 13 and 14 in the business. And that's just extra because, he's obviously still working and making sales and all that. So he's already 6 figures deep before he lifts his pencil and pen to write business for the year. So the point is, but again, very coachable. Calling me all the time from homes early on, always on the Zoom, still on the Zooms, lived in Dropbox. I mean, he did all the right things that a quote unquote coach would ask for in a player. And now he's reaping the rewards. He doesn't need me anymore. He can do his own thing and he's going to kick butt and take names. So, I mean, it's amazing what you can do in this business if you just get it right and dedicate yourself and learn your craft, learn your presentation, learn all these important things and the foundation, and it can change your life for the better from this point forward. So it's amazing, some of these stories. Anybody have any questions for Doug while we have him? No questions. All right. Well,
the
Doug,
only thing I want to say, and I think I shared this with you, Doug, thank you so much for showing Matt this system, okay? Because it's completely different than what I've done, and it has changed my life. So, no, thank you. I applaud you just for what you've done, buddy. Thank you so much.
Awesome.
Yeah, good stuff. Thanks, Rubes. Well, good stuff. I mean, again, Doug, we've known each other for a long time. It's good working with you, and hopefully we can help as many agents as possible from this point forward. Keep going strong, and looking forward to seeing you again, buddy. It was good seeing you in Florida at the meeting, and thanks for jumping on here and doing this interview today.
Absolutely. My pleasure, guys. And again, I hope, I hope that everybody got maybe something, just, if you can think about, everything what we just talked about and what I shared, there's got to be something that everybody on this call can take away today. And thanks for being here.
Yeah, and again on Friday the 21st, guys, we have now officially, let's see, 50 people signed up for that event. Again, let that could possibly be the catalyst to sparking your business to a whole nother level. Please be here. If you fly in, drive in, doesn't matter. Try to be here Friday at Luis's house. We're catering food. We're having all kinds of different trainings for ACA, Medicare, and final expense. So again, thank you. Hopefully we'll see as many people as we can on Friday, the 21st from 12 noon to 5. So it gives you time to drive in as well. So Daniel says, good tips, lots of notes. Want to jump on the FE train. There you go. Is it training in Houston this week? Yes. Ruben has his own training on Wednesday, I believe, Ruben, right? For WellCare, for Medicare only.
It's not my training. It's WellCare's training. And they wanted to do a special training for us, our Houston team. So yeah, be there.
Yeah, Houston and surrounding areas, any agents there, please be there. WellCare is the hot Medicare ticket there in that city. So, all right, guys, again, thank you, everybody. Thanks, Doug, again, and we'll see y'all soon. Bye-bye.